Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. In the security and privacy alerts, apparently the Hunter Biden laptop data is available on the internet because, this guy took his computer to a computer store to get it fixed. And that guy decided that the legal and ethical thing to do was to copy the disk and sell it to whoever wanted it. So now it is available. There are apparently additions and modifications to the data on there. So don't necessarily assume that anything that's on that image, if you download it, including potentially malware, came from the laptop. But nonetheless, you know, I don't have a good answer for you in terms of what to do if you need a computer repaired. I know historically, not to pick on them, but this one happens to be well known. The Best Buy Geek Squad employees have been known to scan through your computer and looking for files of interest and keep them for themselves. If the files are spicy enough, meaning nude pictures of somebody, then they share them with their coworkers and friends. And if they're really interesting, then they share them with the FBI and get paid for it. So, and I don't know that they're any worse than anybody else, but I also don't think they're any better than anybody else. So it's a real challenge. I do have some ideas, and if you are concerned about that, contact me. I will tell you that these ideas will involve some amount of extra work and a little bit of extra cost, but certainly they will make your data a lot safer if you choose to do that. So that's kind of a risk management decision. Next, some people are saying the U.S. needs to be more aggressive in countering Chinese hacking. Hard to argue with, because clearly what we're doing now isn't working. Mark Montgomery of the Center on Cybersecurity and Technology Innovation told a congressional committee this week, or actually last week now, that we need to use the tools that the NSA and others have to go after Chinese hackers and do it very publicly. Is this legal? Who knows? Could it be legal? Who knows? Would it be constitutional? Who knows? If you did it quietly, though, you don't get enough credit for it. You could probably do it covertly enough that you would get credit for it in the right circles and not get blamed for it in the wrong circles. But who knows about that? Anyway, this is in response to things like the Volt Typhoon attack, which attacked the big telephone carriers and included compromising the FBI wiretapping system. So, the downside is that there's likely going to be collateral damage. The Chinese don't care much about collateral damage. So, for example, if they get sufficiently pissed, and we think at this point that they are inside some of our critical infrastructure, would they, for example, choose to turn off the water in Houston or Tallahassee or New Orleans? They might. Would they be willing to cut the power in, Oklahoma City or Dallas? Possible. Would that create an escalating cyber war? Definitely possible. Would that create more collateral damage? Also definitely possible. So it'd be interesting to see how that works. On the other hand, it does imply that now might be a great time to think about hardening your systems and spending more effort on that. Next, in the CMMC section, and like every other week, I'm only going to pick a item on there because there's always lots of items. One of the questions that came up from a client this week, I think is relevant, which is if we move to Microsoft's government cloud called the GCC, Government Community Cloud, can we just move our existing applications, software licenses, from our commercial environment to the GCC or GCC high environment? And the short answer to that is no. First thing is, in many cases, commercial software does not run in the government cloud, period. It just literally will not work. Second, even if it does work, the licensing structure is oftentimes different. That many companies, like, for example, not to pick on them, just Adobe, they have two sets of licenses, their commercial license set and their government license set. And you can't just go off you could technically install your commercial version of Adobe in the government cloud. It wouldn't solve the problem. It wouldn't be compliant, and it wouldn't get you past getting certified if that's something you need to do. On the other hand, it may not just work. The other part is that a lot of times these applications have a cloud component. And if the cloud component of the application is not FedRAMP authorized, then the fact that you're running it in GCC High doesn't make any difference. So a lot of complexities associated with third-party applications. And if this is something you're either considering doing or have done and want to know whether you've kind of set yourself up for failure when it comes to certification time, give us a holler. That's all I'm going to say about the CMMC Q&A for right now, but there's lots more in our newsletter. If you don't get our newsletter, if you're just listening to the video version of this, please contact us and we'll be happy to add you to it. Under important issues, what is the future of TikTok? There's a $64,000 question, or probably in the case of TikTok, $64 billion question. It's a moving target, right? The president did sign an executive order delaying the ban for 75 days. Even though it's not clear that legally he could do that, probably nobody's going to complain, I don't think. The law says he can't do that unless there are guarantees that ByteDance is actively trying to sell the platform. They're not. They say they're not. And who knows what they are, but they say they're not. The app stores have not restored the apps, and part of that is because of the insanely large fines they potentially face. Senator Tom Cotton, who is a Republican chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, is telling business to stay away from the TikTok family of apps because they too could face massive fines. So all this is stay tuned, but for right now, even though there's all kinds of supposed benefits from being on TikTok, I really hesitate to suggest that that's an okay and safe thing to do. And we'll know in 75 days, which is March, whether the president has made a sale. It's probably at best going to get down to the wire. On the other hand, China is good at playing a game of bluff. So who the hell knows what's going to happen next? And this is kind of a breach thing, but also why the hell are you doing it thing. The Toronto School Board was compromised as a result of a third-party vendor. I keep saying third-party vendors, they're the Achilles heel, right? So this particular third-party vendor is a company called PowerSchool, which keeps student data. They lost 40 years of student data, 40 years. And part of that is, the fact that nobody ever wants to get rid of any data they ever collected, myself included. And so, that's what happened. So they supposedly sent letters to parents this week, but I'm not sure how that's technically possible. I mean, they could send parents of current students a letter because they hopefully know where the students live. But if you were a student 40 years ago and your parents maybe passed away, how do they even know where they live now? And is the parent, the right person to send a letter? So I don't know what they're actually doing. I am sure there's going to be serious lawsuits all the way around over this one. But, there's certainly no legal requirement for keeping 40 years worth of student data. Maybe 5 years after the student graduates or leaves, 10 years, 40 years? That's a real stretch. So I think, if you don't have a data retention policy, you might want to go off and consider that. We can help you figure that out. You do want to maintain whatever the legal requirements are that you have. That's always a good thing to do. But beyond that, typically, legal requirements typically don't go much past 7 years at the most. So why the hell are they keeping 40 years worth of data? And if you are keeping it, maybe you need to keep it locked up in a vault somewhere. So in the really off chance that you need access to it, you can get access to it, but it's not spinning around the internet for some hacker to grab. And finally, in the issues and patches department, SonicWall has issued a patch for a 0-day in their SMA 1000 appliance management console. Scores 9.8 out of 10. You can get higher than that, but it's hard to do. And it is being exploited in the wild. So if you are a SonicWall customer and you're using the SMA 1000, time to patch. Speaking of PowerSchool, as I was mentioning a minute ago, they are facing 23 lawsuits, all seeking class action status. PowerSchool is a K through 12 student management software product that lost data on 60 million K through 12 students in the United States and Canada. These lawsuits will likely be consolidated to some degree. Since some of these lawsuits are in Canada and they have much more strict data privacy laws in the United States, the lawsuits between the U.S. and Canada will not be consolidated. So at a minimum, they're going to be facing lawsuits in two countries, and probably more than that. And even if they have cyber risk insurance and they have enough cyber risk insurance to go around, they're still going to be fighting this thing for years. Even if they settle, it's going to take several years to settle. So someone's going to be writing large checks. So, moral of the story, I think there is try to avoid being breached as opposed to hoping that your cyber risk insurance is going to cover you. Not to mention which, I suspect it's probably hard to sell their student management software right now. I suspect their salespeople are really hyperventilating. Nobody in their right mind is going to go buy their product right now if they don't already have it. They'll probably renew it because it's a pain in the ass to move, but new sales, probably not much. Next, the president fired all of the members of a bunch of boards at DHS, including the Cyber Safety Review Board, who was investigating the Volt Typhoon attack against the phone companies. It's in his authority to go do that, so it's not illegal. But, we'll see what happens. Clearly, the carriers are a problem, and likely this could happen again, very likely. In the EU, financial institutions have a new cyber rule called DORA that stands for the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Now, what it's designed to do, and even if you're not in Europe, it's kind of a cool idea. What they want to do is look at these financial institutions' defenses in light of realistic potential cyber attacks as opposed to some theoretical thing. So they're saying, gee, we know insider threat's a problem and an insider threat could do X, Y, and Z. How are you going to respond to that? So there's a whole infrastructure around designing those tests, and that's a requirement for EU financial institutions. But if you're not an EU financial institute, you might want to use it anyway. Again, contact us if this sounds interesting to you. Next, the president signed an EO to study creating a cryptocurrency reserve. So this is just a paper exercise. And remember, the president's family is deep into the crypto business. So, potentially this could benefit them, although I don't think this directly is designed for that. But this committee is going to design whether or not the government should hoard some cryptocurrency. Right now, the government has about 20 billion in crypto that has been seized as part of court cases. Now, the question becomes, does that become restitution to the victims, or can the government prioritize keeping it for themselves? Clearly, this would require some kind of act of Congress, and probably there would be court cases because I would assume the victims would say, gee, no, that's not yours, that's ours. So, but this will take years to figure out, but it's a nice soundbite at the moment. In the education department, speaking of the president's family and crypto, Melania launched a meme coin, which is just has no value, just based on her notoriety. And she did that a couple of days after her husband released his meme coin, and the price of his coin tanked after that, although I think, he's made a lot in fees out of all that. And the crypto world is not sure that this is what they were thinking they were getting into when they supported him, that this was going to be a cash grab on the part of the first family. But that's what they got, so we'll figure out where that's going. Next, MasterCard discovered after 5 years that they had an error in their DNS settings. And that error was being effectively used by, potentially by hackers, or could be used. It's a very interesting attack. It's a very simple attack, and is based on a typo. So this does not require a PhD. This does not even require a grade schooler. It does require somebody who knows how to spell. So maybe that rules out some grade schoolers. But beyond that, that's all it takes. So they have fixed it once they were told about it. In the breaches department, there's a fintech that's a financial technology company called Willow Pays they lost information on about 250,000 people. They're a company that, remember, fintechs are not banks, so their security requirements are much lighter than bank security requirements. But they have similar information. So what they allow people to do is spread out a payment, which is due on a particular date over 4 weeks. And, they lost that information. We'll see how the new administration does on these kind of attacks, but we'll see. Next, there is an ongoing, quote, service interruption, what most of us would call a cyber attack or potentially ransomware attack. Government contractor conduit. It impacts benefits in multiple states. It includes things like, child support and SNAP benefits and stuff like that. They're not saying, of course, what's going on until they get sued, which I am sure is already in process. The company did admit to a ransomware attack back in 2020. Next, Texas is investigating an insider breach, which caused the theft of benefit funds to the tune of a couple $100,000. They fired a handful of people who were, running this insider scam. But they said they immediately responded to the breach. Well, the breach was in 2021, and they immediately responded to it in 2025. So you figure out their definition of immediate. Next, hackers stole about 400 gigabytes of data from American Standard. You may recognize that name as the company that makes the toilet in your bathroom. And they own dozens of brands. So the hackers were giving them about a week to negotiate. Not sure what the details are. I'm sure we'll hear about it. My guess is they're not going to negotiate, but who knows. And lastly, in the breaches department, U.S. defense contractor Stark Aerospace was hacked by the INC ransom group. Now here, this is not good. And this is certainly a food for thought for why we need CMMC. They stole and posted on its dark web blog 4 terabytes of data, including source code, design plans, employee passports, and firmware for all of the UAVs that the company produced. Now remember, they're defense contractors, so these UAVs are at least in part defense UAVs. I'm assuming they're going to sell some of the data to the highest bidder, which probably means like Russia, China, and North Korea, or use it themselves, something like that, right? So not good for the defense industry that's using their products. Next, the Homeland Security nominee, who is now the secretary, bashed CISA at her hearings, nomination or confirmation hearings. She said that CISA should be smaller, more nimble. It should protect government systems and maybe critical infrastructure. Not clear what that spells for the rest of the country. It may well spell you are on your own, and it's been nice while you've been here. So we'll see what that looks like. We don't know at this point. Clearly, it doesn't bode well for increasing the scope of CISA's responsibility. Next, patching has always been hard. Procrastinating, on the other hand, is dangerous. Businesses in general take way too long to deploy patches compared to how long it takes the bad guys to weaponize those patches. Part of it is that patches sometimes fail and take things down. Part of it is a lack of urgency. Part of it is a lack of process. And remember, it's not limited to patching Windows, it's all the software and systems that you have. So, if this is something that keeps you awake at night, reach out to us. And next, AMD. Maybe I shouldn't laugh at some of these things. AMD has a bit of a problem, and you may too. One of AMD's partners, which is ASUS, leaked the fact that there is a microcode bug in many of their chips. And they leaked that before AMD has a patch. In fact, as far as I know, they still don't have a patch. So now the bug is in a while. There is no patch for it. There is no way to fix it or protect yourself. So at least what some people are recommending, which is kind of a nuclear option, is if you have systems with AMD chips, take them off the network or shut them down, same thing. Not a great answer. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, AMD will have a solution and figure out how to deploy it. But right now there is none. And next, the security news update for this week includes, there's a great AI tool, which has been in the news since I wrote this. It comes with a large dose of Chinese propaganda and Chinese censorship. On the other hand, it is inexpensive, and the model is open source, so you can download it and run it yourself. And probably if you did download it and run it yourself and you had enough programming expertise on your team, you could probably get rid of some of the Chinese propaganda and guardrails. Next, Chinese is behind a massive SMS attack, which is, text messages, spam scams of all flavors. The president pardoned Ross Ulbricht, and for those of you who don't know who he is the founder of the underground market Silk Road. He's been in jail for about 10 or 11 years. Think of Silk Road as Amazon, except for murder for hire, illegal weapons and stuff like that. So he's definitely a guy we want out on the street for sure. Next, the administration tells the Democrats on the Intelligence Oversight Board to resign. They didn't. He fired them. The net effect of that could put the EU-US data transfer agreement into basically breach. Whether Europe has the guts to call the United States on it is unclear. But if you do across the pond data transfer, just know that this represents a problem for you. And lastly, the war against men in Europe continues. No big surprise there. So we shall see what happens with that. So, with any of those things, if you need some assistance, please reach out to us. We're always happy to do that. And in the meantime, until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening.